Oh, hello. In today's video, it's going to be my tournament report from Griffcon, the Shatterpoint GT thereof, which has just been finished today. It was today, the 16th of August, and yesterday, the 15th of August. So, yeah, let's get straight into it. So, I want to start off by kind of going over what the event was. It was a 2-day official AMG Grand Tournament. It was actually aiming to be really big, 64 tickets. There's only 16 of us on the day, and I guess really that's the only negative I have of the whole event. I really enjoyed the event. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really well run. I thought the venue was great. Loads of really amazing things to say about it, which I will get into as I go through the presentation. But, and I think there was a sort of a slight sense of disappointment that we just about managed to get kind of 16, which is when there were 64 tickets available. Now, why? Like, I'm not saying a bigger event is always better, because obviously this was great because it meant that everybody who was there could talk to each other and it was more intimate. My only real worry is that I have kind of heard on the digital grapevine that if you don't get enough people for your event, then maybe next year AMG doesn't send prize support. I hope that's not true. And I hope that it continues to get supported officially so that it continues to grow, because the venue there, they got room to grow it. And I think with the right promotion in the various, like the UK Shatterpoint Discord, people like me making videos like this, which hopefully you're watching, going, "Oh, this sounds interesting," right? People talking about, buzzing about it, then hopefully by next year can grow a bit more. I mean, trying to start at 64 is big, right? But I think it could have been a little bit bigger, and so I just my hope is that it continues to get that support so it runs next year, the year after, the year after, the year after it's going. Okay. It was 5 rounds, and again, and this ties into the attendance thing. It was advertised as being, oh, it'll be 6 rounds. If we don't get enough people, it'll be 5 rounds. In the event, it could have been a 4-round event, because with 16 people after 4 rounds, you've got one undefeated player. But then you've got people traveling from like the northwest who have paid right on the basis they're getting 5 or 6 rounds. And if you then suddenly say, hey, you're only getting to play 4 games of Shatterpoint, that would suck a little bit. So it was 5 rounds. That's why that was slightly weird with when you see the final scores at the end. Like, there was a single obvious winner at the end of 4 rounds, and then at 5 rounds it's a little bit more mixed. But like I say, this is the only bit of negativity in the whole video. It was a really great event with a great atmosphere. The guy Brendan that runs the whole thing was really cool, really supportive. And the terrain was great, people there were great, the games were great. The standard of hobby that everybody brought with the different teams was fantastic as well. Had a really fantastic time. So let's just get into it a little bit further. The venue. Oh, this was a weird one. So, okay, the venue was a place called the Latin Bush Centre, which is a conference and business centre operated by the local council. Okay. And it literally had like an NHS outpatients clinic and loads of other different services, and private businesses as well, like would rent out these other units. And so Griffin Gaming, the shop, was one of the retail units in the Latin Bush Centre, right? So you could go in and buy stuff, right? And then, so what he'd done was he rented for the 2 days the conference space that was in the same building as his shop, if that makes sense. So it was like there was the shop, and then you could walk along a corridor, and then there was the convention. It was pretty cool. It was a really good venue, and you'll know if you've seen any of my other reviews of other Shatterpoint events that I've been to, or the Kill Team events that I've been to as well. I'm really I don't think enough people who do tournament reports really talk about the actual facilities of some of these places. So look, free car parking, because it's again it's council menu, so it was free car parking, and there was loads of disabled parking spaces. And again, those of you who have watched a lot of my stuff know that accessibility and stuff is really important to me, really overlooked by a lot of places. So it was there was a few steps, but there was I'm not in a wheelchair, so I didn't need it, and I can manage a few steps. But there was like a whole stair lift thing to make it accessible that could have got you up into the venue if you're in a wheelchair as well. So that brilliant. Really pleased to see that. That's fantastic. And then also there was a cafe as one of the other businesses in the same building, right? It's interesting. I don't know if they're related or not because obviously it's Griffin Gaming, and it was Griffin Cafe. But then I also noticed that there was like a Griffin like lawn bowls team like signposted there, and then there's like a Griffin suite of rooms in the conference center. I think the heraldic device of the Griffin is just a thing that's popular like for the local area. So I don't know if all the things named Griffin are actually all related to each other. It'd be weird if the same people owned a Warhammer store and a cafe and a bowls green, but maybe they do. I didn't ask. Anyway, so there was a cafe, which first of all, like you're based in a building and like it's a bit out of the way. I'm guessing not many people go there just to go to the cafe. I'm guessing what that mainly their trade is the people that work in the other parts of the building. And then suddenly there's this convention full of hungry nerds who aren't really going to venture anyone else. So it was always really busy. So I'm sure the cafe people were thrilled at the additional custom. And it was one of these things where you looked at it and to judge a place by its cover, it looked pretty unassuming. It was like, well, this is going to be a pretty standard like British cafe, and sometimes those kinds of places are a bit rough. Um, the food was actually really, really good. Probably the best food I've eaten. I don't know how to say that sentence because I mean, like Warhammer World does have a whole restaurant, but in its way, it was better because the thing is, yes, it was like toasted sandwiches, but they had a huge selection of like different kinds of things they could do, and they had proper coffee with a you know the full espresso machine, and they did iced tea was really good, and my mate Blue off the Discord always got one of their iced lattes, and all the different things were really, and it's like it was one of those things where it was just like attention to detail. So, for example, you ordered a toasty, you think, right, I've ordered a toasty, da, 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 and it reasonably priced stuff as well. And then it would come on the plate with just like a handful of kettle chips, like crisps, and you're like, that you didn't need. That's adding to your overheads, and you didn't need to do. It wasn't advertised that it came with crisps. You could have sold me a bag of crisps to go with the sandwich and made more money. So it's like I was actually really thrilled with the food options. And again, one of the slightly weird things about Griffcon was it wasn't Saturday, Sunday, it was Friday, Saturday. So I'm Roman Catholic, so I don't try not to eat meat on a Friday. And so one of the things, if I'm somewhere on a Friday, is I'm like, oh, is there going to be like, what's going to, there was like 5 different, I had like a tuna melt, but I could have had like a cheese and onion or a cheese and tomato and pesto and all these different things. And then on the second day, I had like a sloppy Joe toasty with like beef chili with cheese, and just loads of options. So yeah, and they had other things as well. Sandwiches. Blue was always getting the BLT sandwiches. They look really good as well. Uh, so yeah, that was really really good and reasonably priced as well. Um, Multiple very clean toilets as well, which is great. Again, because it was a big thing, and so in addition to it being Griffcon, it also had its own like building staff, so that was really cool. And the actual convention on the Saturday, it was boiling red hot. It was a British heat wave. I actually thought the ventilation was good. I mean, Brendan who was running it apologised for the ventilation. He said, "Oh, all we've got is these ceiling fans." And I remember looking up and thinking, "Well, you've got ceiling fans, right?" So compared with as I've talked about before, um, kill team events like in Sanctuary in Nottingham, where I've talked about this before, it was red hot there, because that is an old job centre, right? Does not have ceiling fans. So like you've got ceiling fans. Don't downplay the fact that you've actually got some ceiling fans. That's something. That's not that common actually in the UK for places to have some air circulation. So no, it was really good. I'll talk a little bit. I will get on to talking about Shatterpoint in a minute. I just want to kind of give the overview of the thing. So Griffcon, tabletop gaming convention, and it's obviously, I think, if you have been and looked at and listened to podcasts and been like, oh, Adepticon and all these things sound really cool. Obviously, an attempt to try and build something on that model. Now, look, it was small. There were like 5 or 6 dealers, and there were 2 tournaments running, and there were some demo games and things going on. So it was small, but it was really good fun. There was probably the biggest dealer there in terms of companies you heard of was Mantic Games. And Mantic Games were there doing demo games of Halo Flashpoint, which I'm told is a really good game, but it doesn't appeal to me because I never played Halo on the video game at all. But a video game I have played is Worms, and they had the Worms board game, and I had been curious about that ever since they got the license, because how do you turn Worms into a board game? And so after the Shatterpoint tournament finished on the second day, we had some hours left, and I basically and then got the Mantic guy to give us we demoed through a whole game. It took about 40 minutes, and that was great. So then I picked up a copy of that. Right, that's really cool. There were some other dealers there that were interesting. They were all weirdly. I would have thought, and I don't really know because I've never been to UK Games Expo, and I've never been to LGT, so I've never been to any of the 2 big conventions that the UK does do like this. But I would have thought if you're a dealer room at a convention, obviously you're going to have the big ticket items, but people that know that they want something really expensive are going to get it off your website. What you're going to really get people to buy at a convention is stuff that's a bit impulsy, like Blue bought from Mantic. Just like he doesn't want to play the Halo game necessarily, but he bought a Master Chief so that he could paint the Master Chief thing. Right, that makes sense. But some of the dealers there were there was a guy that was his whole business was selling really expensive bespoke wooden gaming tables that cost over £1,000. Okay. There was a guy that had really nice looking hobby desk organizers. If you know my painting streams, I have one that I've 3D printed that is a bit ramshackle, to be fair, but really expensive. There was someone that had it was a woodworking person, but they had dice boxes and dice towers and plinths for miniatures and things. There was a company that was selling some third-party miniatures that I'd never heard of before, their own stuff, but they weren't to my taste. Yeah. And then inside the actual convention, so that was the dealer room, and then inside the convention there was so there was the Shatterpoint tournament. I'll get to it in a minute, and then there was there was a Blood Bowl on the second day. There was an official Blood Bowl tournament. It's weird that the 2 games, it's to my taste because I like smaller scale games. It wasn't a big 40k or an Age of Sigmar tournament. It was Shatterpoint and Blood Bowl were the 2 games they went for. I think that's really cool, actually. I think there's a niche there for being a skirmish game convention. There were some other demo games. I didn't get a chance to play in most of them because we didn't have a lot of time because most of it was taken up with the Shatterpoint tournament. There was a guy had some Trench Crusade that he brought with him, all the stuff, and was trying to get people into that. There was a guy that had a game that he'd invented himself that looked like it was a take on. If you remember, the Games Workshop did an Orky racing game that they bring out at some of the shows, and it looked like it was a version of that. And I wanted to get a go at that, but it was specific time slots, and it just never seemed to match up with when we were free from the tournament. And then there were a couple of there was a raffle for raising money for charity, and then there was a game where you drew a random card and you had to save a hit from the Primarch Fulgrim with the random card, and then you'd be given a Space Marine Scout or an Intercessor or something, and then if you won, you got prize. I'll talk about the prize tickets in a little bit as well. they were running. I don't want to sell them short because I didn't do a lot of this stuff because I was in the tournament. There are also a couple of seminars, one on like needle felt crafting, which yeah, sure. People that play miniatures might also be not for me, but you know, it was full, so it was obviously popular. And one was about making like bases, like better using different bits of flock and gravel and stuff to make bases. Wasn't an option for anyone playing in the Shatterpoint tournament because obviously they overlapped with the other time. And then the store on site had a 25% discount for the whole event. Now, look, it's not that special because lots of the big online, you know, Irrelevant Games, Dark Spheres, etc., have that kind of level of discount all the time. But there are lots of other smaller shops that are, generally speaking, RRP stores, and they have different things of value added and different business models. So they were having their stuff was on par with these big online discounters for the duration of the convention, which was cool. So on the first day, I picked up a kind of spray paint that I just happened to need anyway. Like I need a kind of undercoat. I was trying really good and not buy anything. Just because it's my birthday pretty soon, and if I buy the last couple of Shatterpoint boxes that I don't have that people know that I really want, it's like, well, you know, Zimbab basically told me that he was going to pick up the Hondo box of my birthday, so I didn't, because I was in danger of buying it then and there. So, I did also get a custom Shatterpoint gaming mat. I'm going to talk about that briefly as well. And so we're leading into the actual tournament report now. All of the games were played on one of 3 versions of this mat on the screen. Now, I don't know if you can see on the video, but this has got the you got the cursor here. So this has got the deployment line on, right? And then it's got the positions for shifting and sabotage. And it's also got, which I think is a bit unique, it's got the control radius around each point. Now, if you played Kill Team, right, you'll know that it's really common in Kill Team to get people have 3D printed discs and things. I've shown them off before on my channel. Pop down over the objectives in that game to show the control range. I wasn't 110% sure on it in Shatterpoint when I first saw it because Shatterpoint has quite strict rules about only putting 2 measuring tools on the table at any one time. So you can have a range tool and your move tool, and that's kind of it. Whereas like Kill Team, in line with all the other Yoli games, all the information is there all the time forever. So there's never a kind of a, I'm not sure if that's in, I'll have to commit to it and see kind of a thing. And so I guess if you were a galaxy brain, you could use this as extra information in a couple of key like edge case scenarios. But oh my word, let's not build giant let's not build problems for ourselves. By the end of the event, I was so totally sold on the utility of these things. It just makes deploying and setting things up so much simpler. Because you can just see stuff and just do stuff. So yeah, I picked up one of these mats. It was like £15 with a 25% discount. Right, and it would have been rude not to at that price. Now I did speak to Brendan and I said, "Oh, you should do a second one that has shifting, not shifting, that has never tell and first contact, especially for first contact. Oh my gosh, imagine if you had pre-marked map for first contact. It would actually make first contact playable in a reasonable span of time." But he was basically like, well, you know, I'd like to, but it's finding time amongst all the other, because he, in addition to running the gaming store and running the event and running, he also is like a air cadet. I don't know how military stuff works, like an air cadet leader, sergeant. Had all his cadets with him as well, helping out with his gaming event, and they were raising money at the same time. So some of the raffles and stuff were for the cadet unit. So that's cool. But and he's basically and he's also designed 3D printed tokens for Shatterpoint that, like, I've done some 3D printed tokens, but he's actually designed ones that you print and then and I understand why he's done it, because I've tried to print full color tokens with things on the both sides and the bottom always looks weird, but he's got a thing where he's printed them in 2 halves and then he super glued them together with a jig and they look pretty cool. So basically, he develops a lot of different products, and so he understands the desire to have a map with the other 2 missions on it, but it's just finding it. So hopefully he does, though, because I'd definitely buy one, right? So you can only ask for things, you don't ask, don't get. So I mentioned it, but hopefully. Right, let's get into the actual event. So just to remind you, this was what I took to the tournament. I've done a whole video where I basically go through my logic and reasoning and why I took the things that I took. I will link that video in the description in case you haven't seen it and you want me to go into more detail about what on earth I was thinking. Very, very quickly, I'm going to take Andor, Callus, and Baze and Chura in every single game. So it's Andor, Anchor, right? So basically what we're trying to do is maximize the number of possible rerolls we can get with Callus. We're going to play, and then Baze and Chura and Andor they just work so well together in so many ways. The other 3 squads, the Leia squad with the commandos in is basically what I want to take when I see that we've got Never Tell Me the odds in the mix. My opponent's got Never Tell because obviously the commandos that infiltrate, I think they work really well with C-3PO and R2-D2 because they get up the board, and then of course you can move them up even further. Leia's got a really big move. You can beef them up with the coordinated fire expose. They've got coordinated fire damage as well, so you've got all these auras of coordinated fire, and then of course they can be steadfast with C-3PO and R2-D2. The Lando team, basically, it comes about because I think Rebels have 3 good 2-body supports, and I've used them, so I needed a 4th 2-body support. Han and Chewie, they're not Rebels. I find that irritating because then you can't dash them with Andor and stuff easily. So take Lando, make them Rebels when they need to be Rebels. Lando kind of helps with Force, and Bosk. Bosk's just a cool guy. But the basic idea with that pairing is that by having all of your killing power in the supports, it was basically my plan for if I ran into Anakin Skywalker lists. Because what Anakin really wants to do is murder primaries. So basically, you have 2 primaries that you can afford to hang back on the back line. And you're sending your supports up to do all the damage because they can do damage like they're a primary, those 2 5-cost 2-body supports, right? And that was the plan there. And then the Luke squad, I just think that's a pretty cool squad because, of course, Bodhi gives the Pathfinders, because they're spies as well, he gives them both steadfast and immunity to expose. So it's just a really solid, really tanky, really mobile option there, right? So round 1, I was facing into a guy called Paul Sutton. Okay, so I saw Paul had Never Tell, so I opted for my Princess Leia squad. Okay, Paul was running the Spectre boxes pretty well as is, but with Zeb swapped out for the Commandos. I actually won the roll, but because I'd chosen Leia squad, I think, well, I'll choose Never Tell. Okay, this was a fun game, and it was a close game. Although I say it felt really close. Paul won in 2 struggles, but it felt close. I feel like there were some really fun moments. I enjoyed R2 and Chopper had a astromech fight. That was really cool. One thing I would say is there weren't as many ladders on the terrain as we would have liked between us. We did actually, like, Paul flagged this up after the game, and they got some more ladders and put extra ladders out for us, so that was cool. My issue and why I think I lost this game purely came down to positioning, and I seem to say this in every Shatterpoint rundown that I do. I just wasn't clear enough on what patterns could come up in Struggle 2, and I just had, there was that point over on the left-hand side where Chopper just sat there for 2-3 activations going, yeah, I've got this point, and I just couldn't seem to get anyone over there to kind of do anything about it. You can see that it was a relatively low wounds game. Obviously, we both knew how revenge lists worked, and we weren't planning to give people wounds to trigger those revenges, so I wasn't pushing people around the board with Andor as much as I would have liked. And yeah, it was just my positioning, I think, and yeah. Round 2 was against Harry Bennett. Harry was running Separatists. So I know Separatists really well because I was stuck on Separatists for a long time. He had Dooku, Savage, and Magnas with Asajj, Kraken, and B2s. I took the Luke list just because I wanted to make sure it was out of the way. The Luke list, more than any other one, didn't really have a particular, like, oh, if my opponent's this and this, that's when we take Luke. It was just kind of a list that I had. I basically knew how to dismantle this list because I played it and had it dismantled by other people. So I killed his B2s. That's the 2 wounds I scored with the B2s twice. And basically ignored everything else because I didn't want to give Dooku any triggers. Especially didn't hit Dooku, despite my opponent suggesting it at one point, because I know exactly what Dooku can do. And I think I came to a real realization here that actually, if you want to be really, really good at a game, you need to play everything because the kind of intuitive understanding I had of Separatists and the way in which I was able to leverage that playing into Separatists, like the advantage I felt I had there was palpable. I will say, when you're trying to ignore Separatists, Asajj will demand that you pay her attention. She does. She's very mobile and she's very choppy. But I will say, the rest of Separatists are quite slow. When you know not to wound them and not to punch Dooku, they felt quite slow. One thing that I did do that was poor was Luke Skywalker was in the middle and did a profit by this will be destroyed, and Asajj was able to basically go, well, okay, I'll just jump off this point and get onto this other point, and I'm like, yeah, I need to watch for that. On shifting as well, which is the map I brought, I'm like, oh, I need to watch for that. I begin to think maybe shifting isn't the map for me. I don't know. I always go backwards and forwards on that one. Make a video talking about the different missions, maybe. But yeah, that was round 2. It was a good game, but it was possibly my easiest one. Just because I think because I knew the enemy team really, really well. Round 3 was against Matt Willis, who is blue on the Discord, who is one of my quartet, the 4 people in my car. We're doing Matt, Paul Allen, and my wife Helen. And that is my local meta, I guess, my local play group. So Matt was running the same layer squad as me, right? So layer with 3PO and the Commandos. And then his other squad was Low Grey, Chewie, and the Pathfinders. Now, I've played against Matt many, many times, and I generally win. But he really made me sweat this game. He got a struggle off me. It was 2-1. And you can see from the picture, like, my layer is right the way at the back left over here, out of position. If you watch my first video where I talk about my team and how I like to try and play things, you'll know that I've said, oh, you want to get layer in the mid board, but not actually on a point, because then she can spread her aura out to almost everybody. And I ended up having to run her up there and do that because I was having to react, and I was on the back foot a lot because Matt was really making me fight for the wins, and it was one of the things where I lost the first struggle, and I just had to tooth and claw back through struggle 2 and struggle 3, which is very rare, right? Because usually, if it goes to 3 struggles, you lost struggle 1, the person that wins struggle 1 wins struggle 3. So that was a very, very nail biting game. What I will say about this terrain, if you can't really see it in the picture, but if you imagine where my mouse is, there was actually a point down there in the third struggle, or was it? Yeah, the third struggle, I think it was. No, the second struggle it would have been. And that area just got so clogged up with bodies, even when they were wounded, we just couldn't get people in onto the point because they were being blocked by the corpses, essentially, of the other. And it was very, very, like, yeah, we should have looked at the terrain and looked at where we put the objectives and actually said, like, oh, should we move? Because you can do that in Shatterpoint. It's not like other games where you must not touch the CO terrain. You can sort of say with your opponent, like, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Should have thought about that because it was really horrible. Round 4 versus Connor. So I was starting to worry now because my submarine was surfacing. Like, I didn't go in with the intention to submarine, but having lost the first game and then won the second 2, was very aware that I was going to start encountering really challenging games. Connor was running Obi, Rex, and the Commandos with Hunter, Crosshair, and Tech and Echo. I ran Andor and Lando because remember I took Lando, he's my play into Anakin list. Anakin hadn't come up. Spoilers wouldn't come up for me for the whole tournament. I didn't want to be list locked into the last game because I was like, well, what if the person in the last game I really want Leia again because they're running Never Tell or something like that. So I was like, well, I'm playing Lando to get him done. Now, I did know what a lot of these did. Obi, Rex, Commandos, Bad Batch. Helen plays a lot of Republic. So I knew things, for example, like just to not try and punch Obi-Wan, there's no point, right? That there is no point. Now, again, this was another table. I think this must be how they tend to play, how Brandon likes to play, how he likes tables. Very few ladders. So if you look here, this whole like structure here, there was one ladder here and one ladder like up here and then a second ladder up here. So very difficult to actually access this. And then this piece 40k terrain, 0 ladders. So it just meant that Connor had quite the advantage with his commandos because they have scale. Scale, I was reflecting on this, is a really interesting rule because all scale lets you do is make a dash into a climb. But it's not jump. So if you're being forced to dash because you're in combat, you still can't climb. So scale is good in this list because Rex is there to give out dashes. So to make use of scale, you have to be like, well, where am I getting these dashes from? And it could, and a lot of things have dash on their card as well, but it was interesting. But he was able to make really good use of it to split his commandos up. You get one. Sorry, I'm yawning because I'm tired. I get one up on the big 40k plinth there, and one was up on the big upper bridge in the middle. And it takes a lot then to get up onto there to get things back. I did win, and I won in 2, but in the inverse of my first game, it would be a real mistake to think that I just because I won in 2, it did not feel like I stomped him. The first game, the first struggle, and even the second struggle were both really, really on the knife edge. It was a really brutal game. My hot take, I actually think Connor was a better player than me. I just don't think the Bad Batch are very good. I know they're really popular. A lot of people like to play the Bad Batch. I can't remember the last time, because Zimbad likes the Bad Batch as well. I can't remember the last time Hunter specifically impressed me with his activation. Like, and I know he does stuff for the rest of the batch with some dice fixing and other bits, but I can't remember the last time he impressed me at all in his activation. And at the same time, I think Tech and Echo are, because all the other clones got a wound buff and they didn't, they just feel like a liability. They're just very, very squashy and killable. Secondary's great, right? I just don't. I see the Bad Batch and think, oh, great, the Bad Batch, cool. That'll be straightforward. I don't know. They're not. Hunter's not somebody that I think. But I know that, like, if you listen to the American podcasts and stuff, like, oh, Hunter Obi was a big thing for a while there. But I just don't personally. I don't quite see it. My round 5 then was into Fraser. Now Fraser, as people that watched my, it was only up for channel members because it was very, very. I was very, very tired. And I was very, very. Oh yeah. But I did like a mid-tournament update, and I was saying, oh, I could get paired into this guy, and then I was clicking through and looking out because I clicked through on the thing and looked at what everybody had in their list on Longshanks, and I noticed that Fraser has this little yellow Hondo sticker, so he's the best Hondo player in the world. He's the highest ranked Hondo player on Longshanks. And I'm like, oh no, it's the Hondo. And then round 5 is like, oh, the Hondo guys. I just read Saber and said, all right, the Hondo guy. And he was like, ah. And he turns around to his friends like, this guy called me the Hondo guy. And I'm like, yeah, well, you're the world's best Hondo player. It's like, yeah. So he was running Hondo and some other people. No, it was Hondo, Ezra, and Bartu, and then Kane and Callus and Zeb. So it was basically a Spectre list, but with Hondo and Bartu. Interesting that he had Zeb over Chopper. That was the only thing that I thought was interesting. Because because I like Chopper over Zeb, I think. I ran and/or Lando because I thought it'd be funny to pass. Because Lando's got this thing where he can, for his tactic, he can dash, and then like you can dash a scout. You pick a scoundrel within 3 or 4, I can't remember. And then if it's a friendly, it can dash, and then if it's a friendly or an enemy, Lando can pass all his conditions onto it. Which I thought would be funny to do. Never came up. Right, Lando really let me down this game, as Lando is wont to do. It's this whole thing where Lando's a really thematic character because he is a gambler and he feels very gamblery. But Lando just kept coming at inappropriate times. I would top deck Lando, I would bottom deck Lando. I think at one point I drew Lando, and then the one time I got to shuffle him back in, and then I promptly drew him again. Like, Lando just screwed me up. I never had enough force because I had 4 force, and Lando just wasn't doing his thing. Obviously, I had Baze and Turret, and that really helped, but still. Now, and Fraser was smart and wounded Callus most not many. This was the most wounds in any game. This one was really wounded. So again, what's Callus's wound? It's like, well, I'm now not ever going to pay 2 for my rerolls. Okay, I will say though, Bosk was a legend, and he managed to do the fun thing he can do, where I'd previously put Ezra down onto 1 wound and decided not to kill him because I didn't want Kanan running around and murdering me. And then Ezra was moved back onto a point in the middle, and then Bosk threw a grenade at him. And managed to do 1 wound. And then it's like, oh, the Kanan doesn't get to revenge trigger because he only gets to revenge trigger when it's wounded as a result of an enemy attack action. So, cool. Struggle 1 in this game basically went on for a long time. It was a lot of I score 3, you score 3, 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 I score 3, just constantly scoring 3 against each other. And then I pulled it 1 time, he scored 2, and then I scored 3, and then he scored 3, and then I scored 3, and then he scored 3, and then I scored 2, and he scored 3, and then it started to snowball. And essentially, where I really lost the game, I think, is Baze and Turret had 2 wounds on them, and they were in reserve, and I activated them and got a point and tried to get a wound and stuff. And I just needed to slow down a little bit and look at the maths on that and realize that I was going to lose that struggle anyway, to all intents and purposes, and then I should have done something differently and not sacrificed having those 2 models on the table. I spaffed away too much force as well, which I should have started to pull back, conserve, and gone, oh, I give up struggle 1, let's focus on struggle 2. Because then struggle 2 was a very quick win for Fraser. I'm not saying this to say anything bad about Fraser, right? Because people complain about slow play. Fraser was going along at a very, very pacey this done. And so when your opponent, at least for me, when your opponent is playing at what felt like a slightly quicker pace, and then you don't want to let that person down, you want to perform. So I was playing at a slightly quicker pace than I usually do. I'm not saying I usually play slowly, but this felt a little bit quicker than I'm used to. And so then maybe I just should have taken a minute. I'm sure I could have done because Fraser's the top man. I should have just taken a minute to just really look and go, oh, hang on. Rather than so yeah, that was my round 5. So where did I end up? I ended up at 7th place. So really pleased to end up in 7th place because obviously top 8 get extra price support from AMG. Fraser's involved. If I just won that last game, I could have been in the top 4 and it would have been absolutely glorious. But no, I can't complain because I was beaten by Hondo. It's amazing and he deserves it, right? And if he was using somebody actually good, he probably would have beaten me more easily. No, I have to bow down and say, look, I was beaten by the world's best Hondo player. Like, that's a story, okay? So look, let's go through. So I'm in number 7th, my lovely wife in number 8. So we both finished in top 8 and got to take home extra prizes. Matt Willis blew in 11th place. Unfortunately, Paul Zimbad had to drop from day 2. I've mentioned before he has a chronic medical issue, and when it flares up, he just can't. So that sucks. And believe me, no one's more gutted than he is. And it did mean that some people had to endure a bye for the 2 games that are on day 2. But it is what it is. Winner was Jed, the TO from Element Games. So it was really nice to see. Like, he obviously is a really skilled player because he won, but it's really nice to kind of see people who are mainly known for being a TO actually get to play the game right, and show why they command the trust and respect of their command of the rules in the community, because they're actually also really good at the game, right? And then, you know, it was just, you got people up there from London. You've also got people who were up there from Norwich, right? Some of the Norwich guys were there as well. So it was a really good event, really well attended. I had a great time, really enjoyed it. Yeah, can't complain. Can't complain. It's about prizes. So at the top there, you see all of the official AMG prizes that I received. So along the bottom, we got the Shatterpoint cards. Everybody got that. That was one of the participation prizes. Like, they're interesting. They're on a sort of slightly matte. Like, they've got like a more premium feel to the card, which is interesting. I run my cards sleeved, so I don't think it's a huge issue for me. I do wonder if you just had if you play with your cards naked, whether you could like quite tell where the Shatterpoint card was in the deck. I run my cards sleeved, so it's not an issue for me. But yeah, it's interesting because they tried to make them more premium. I do kind of wonder if I'm making them more premium than made them less useful as a playing piece. But like I said, I use sleeves on mine with like, yeah, they look great. And then also, as a participation prize, you got the 2 stickers and the dice, loads of dice. So that was great. I don't know why AMG chose green, like a slightly different shade of green for the defense dice, when in last year's kit they were also green, but there you go. And then because I finished in the top 8, that's why I got the foil cards for Sabe, Shakti, Callus, uh, Paz Vizsla, and Hondo. So obviously I have Callus, so I'm using that straight away. At some point, I intend to get around to picking up a Kiadi Mundi box, because I want Shakti and the Padawans for other strange, not because I'm starting to play Republic, I just want to do strange things with them in other niche lists. So the Shakti card will come in, and Hondo is probably something else that I'll pick up one of these days as well. I can't see me using the Sabe or the Paz Vizslas, though. There you go. And then also in the bottom thing there was a thing called the Griffcon prize wall. And so for participating in different events during the day, buying things in the shop even, but also like playing the demo games, doing other random stuff, you could achieve these Griffcon points cards things, and then you could exchange them. And we got loads of them for playing in the tournament, and then you could exchange them for basically this sort of merch stuff. There was some other stuff that, like, Helen got a t-shirt, right? Didn't know any t-shirt. I'm like a 5-6 XL, so I don't expect people to get t-shirts. There was some other stuff that I think had already gone by the time we went to look at the prize wall, like little metal pin badges and other bits. But yeah, just loads of random bits. Like, it's not gonna it's not amazing, but it was all free, you know, and a nice handmade dice bag thing, which is interesting, you know. So yeah, you can't. It's just nice, isn't it? It's just a nice little extra that doesn't need to be there. It's just the attention to detail thing. So, I got loads of the stickers. I got one out on my desk. I have all Element Games stickers and Kill Team stickers and random other stickers, and now I've got some Griffcon stickers on there. That's cool. Personal reflection. So listen, it was a great day, and I enjoyed every game. Um, and I really hope that it runs next year. And I also really hope, now that I know this place, the Harlem Latin Bush Centre and Griffin Gaming and all that stuff, is only about an hour and 5, an hour and 10 from my house, right? It's somewhere I could visit more regularly and eat more delicious toasties. I mean, play more games of Shatterpoint. But I just don't know how, so here's my quandary. If you look at the Athena in Norwich, right? They run events that are capped at, I think it's 14 players, and they sell out in about 2 minutes. And they get the smaller. So in addition to the grand tournament kit, AMG also do a small store tournament kit, or the small store league kits that have these other promotional cards in. And those small, and it doesn't need to have a price spot either, but it's just smaller games like that. Now, the quandary is their events sell out. They could probably run a bigger event, but they won't at Norwich. Now, the reason they won't is because of terrain. And I did have a chat with some of the Norwich guys about how they could get the community source terrain and stuff like they do for Kill Team in the Norwich, not Norwich, in the Notts Kill Team guys, right? They do a thing for their terrain where if you bring, this is free to anybody else that wants this piece of advice, because this come from me from Jason, who isn't watching a video about Shatterpoint, but they do a thing in their Kill Team community where if you bring a table of terrain to the event, your terrain, and then you let people play on it throughout the event, but then there's a prize for the best painted terrain table sourced from the community. And that is a way where you get your events without any cost to the venue. You get them looking really cool, being really awesome. Now, it does mean that people have to accept that people might, accidents can happen, right? For sure. But it's just interesting. I think there are ways around it. But anyway, it's supposed to be about Griffin Gaming and Griffcon, and I'm starting to wobble on about other things because I have the personality that I have, and I've been doing this for 47 minutes, and it's 11:30, and I should be in bed, and all the other things. So, yeah, I think it would be really cool to see the Griffin Gaming place run some smaller events. I'd definitely go to them. And then, in addition to people, I don't want to flatter myself too much, but this sort of thing, word of mouth, right? Getting onto the UK Shatterpoint Discord and the UK the Facebook groups for Shatterpoint in the UK. Why it's still on Facebook when we're all under 50, I don't know, but it is. It's big on Facebook. But also building up the grassroots community as well with smaller tournaments and things. Get a really, really big event next year. It'd be really cool. In terms of my own performance, I am thinking of retooling my list somewhat because I'm not really overly fond of the way Lando performed. I'm also starting to think Han and Chewie are overrated. I know everybody's really hot on Han and Chewie, and my word, they can kill, but you shoot them, they get to roll 4 defense dice, and their defensive expertise is bobbins. And yes, they have 10 wounds. But honestly, the best thing they have keeping them alive is when your opponent looks at you at their card and goes, oh, they have 10 wounds, I won't bother shooting them then. And you're just thinking, okay, that's good because you haven't read the defensive expertise table. It's gash. There's nothing that hurts more than getting 3 expertise and going, oh, that's 1 block then. I'm also not 110% that Callus is the best 4-point to go with Andor and Basin. Don't get me wrong, and especially if you've seen my other video, I like all the different bits of synergy and how it works, and getting those rerolls when you get them is really strong, and your opponent starts to really see red and go, oh, I've got to stop Callus, I've got to wound Callus, I've got to do this. And Callus is also pretty strong in his own right. He goes and runs up and shoves people. But it does kind of really muck up your force economy. because you've got this extra potential force cost all the time, and you can't, like, it really sucks to not. But then sometimes you spend the force and you don't get anything back because you're spending it on randomness. It's a tough one. And I just think with a list with, like, Callus is undoubtedly very good. With Andor, with that Andor's bringing the 2 force. I don't know. I don't know who I'd run in. Like, obviously Andor and Baze and Turret are fire. And then who do you put in that slot? You know, Ezra's obviously going to be possibly a good shout, because then you've got this. I don't have the Spectre boxes, but you got the Tiebreaker that you can move around with your Revenge trigger, and that sounds powerful. And then Fraser was telling me that he likes Chewie with Andor. I can't quite see it because I just don't really think. I don't know. I don't rate secondary Chewie somehow. But if I'm trying to also replace the Lando squad with something and not run Han and Chewie, that does free up Chewie and Han to appear elsewhere on the list for sure. But I'm going to park all those thoughts for a minute. My next event is a showdown at Athena Games on the 30th. And I want a little break from Andor because I played 5 games in a row with that one Andor squad. I also don't want to do a whole pile of hobby because I want to hobby some other stuff, some Warhammer stuff, because I've hobbied intensively on a lot of Shatterpoint in the run-up to this event. So I got 2 lists I'm thinking of. One is a list that Oro came up with. I mean, I was kind of saying, oh, you could do this and you could do this, and Oro's like, well, rather than that or that, why don't you move it around and do this? And it come up with this list. And so this is Luke and Endor Lair. But what the genius that Oro applied to it is just to swap. So instead of running Endor Lair with the 3PO and the commandos on her side, and then you run Luke with Bodhi and the Pathfinders on his side, which is how they would be as 2 squads in my Premier list. If you know you're only ever going to run them together, you swap them, because then you end up with, right, you have, in the Luke Skywalker side, Luke is variously handing out immunity to pin and immunity to expose, depending on whereabouts he is, right? You've got the fact that 3PO and R2-D2 can give Luke a dash if he's near them, and then they're handing out steadfast, okay? And you've got one set of coordinated fire. You've got coordinated fire damage all over on that side. And then the other side, you've got your other coordinated fire, right? You've got Bodhi Rook, who's handing out steadfast to Leia and the Pathfinders, who's handing out immunity to expose to the Pathfinders, and the Pathfinders themselves are immune to be pinned. So you've got a very mobile list, right? Because Bodhi can move things, Leia can move things a lot, 3PO and R2-D2 can move things, and the Pathfinders love being moved. You've got a very mobile list, and you're just going to constantly tell your opponent, no, they're steadfast, they're immune to pin, they're immune to expose, and that could be quite fun. So that's one thought, and obviously they would go with Never Tell Me the Odds. The other thing is, I really want to have a list. I like Jyn Erso. I think she's really cool. I want to make her work. My issue with Jyn Erso, and the reason ultimately that she didn't make it into my Premier list, Jyn Erso really wants out of activation movement that can target her. She wants to be out of activation moved a heck of a lot. And I think in the same way that Baze and Turret are kind of want to be with Andor all the time, I think Jyn Erso really likes Hero Luke, because Hero Luke does a lot of interesting stuff for her. But she's an 8-point. You're taking Jyn and Hero Luke, then you want to take Baze and Turret to have a 5-cost support to fill the gap, right? And they're one of the best supports in the games. But then that's obviously not in the other squad with Andor, and also you've got Luke, so then you're not also running Luke somewhere else. But I think that could be a really good list as well. And plus, it's just so mobile. It's like a real mobility thing, because obviously Leia, again, has that tactic full move. So it's variation on a theme, right? They're both pretty similar, right? But I don't know which one I will play. I think I'll probably do what Oro calls Wonder Twins, so the Luke Lair list, only because if I really like that list, I might run at the Element Games GT, I might run a 2x2, which I know is a bit more boring, but where that is half of the list, and then the other half can be Andor, something, Baze and Churret, something. I need to get there, but that's basically my thoughts. Were you at this event? Please do share your thoughts down below, especially if I have done you dirty, which sometimes happens if I've forgotten some key detail or moment of tactical genius from our game. Please do let me know. I'm doing the next thing I'm doing, as I've said a few times, is I'm heading up to Athena on the 30th for a showdown event. Do subscribe, comment, like, consider joining my Discord. Link is in the description. And also, if you haven't already seen it, check out my earlier video when I explain more of the thoughts behind my list creation process. Big thanks to my channel members, especially the long-suffering channel members who are mainly here for Kill Team content, and now I am going off on one about Shatterpoint. And yes, I know there's been a lot of really exciting news on Warhammer community today and yesterday, and I am going on about Shatterpoint because I have been at a 2-day Shatterpoint event. I promise, a Kill Team video is coming tomorrow. Okay, I promise. But a big thanks especially to Alex McElhenney, who is a member at the toppest of top tiers, and therefore generates a significant amount of puts a significant amount of money in my pocket every single month. Thank you so much, all of you. I appreciate you all very highly. Thanks, I hope you enjoyed the video. I now need to. Oh my gosh, it's 11:30. I need to get to bed. But have a great one. Bye bye. 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 Bye bye.